Yeah. Okay. Okay, welcome everybody here tonight to the Fire Exec Committee meeting. Call this meeting to order. It's 5 o'clock. And please note that this meeting is being broadcast and recorded. Recordings will be made available on the town's YouTube channel. Moving right on with the agenda there. If anybody here has a conflict or pecuniary interest, you can declare it now or anytime throughout the meeting as you see fit. Item number 3, the agenda adoption of committee meeting minutes. The minutes be adopted by the Fire Executive Committee and that those confidential minutes of the closed sessions of committee remain confidential and restricted from public disclosure in accordance with the exemptions provided in the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. We have the minutes, Fire Exec Committee minutes of January the 8th, 2024. And closed Fire Exec minutes of January the 8th, 2024. Well, anybody got any questions or anything on that? Not, that was moved by Mr. Gary Atkinson, the mayor, seconded by Kristen Rodriguez. In favor of those minutes? Carried. Moving to number 4 there. Is there any business arising from them previous minutes? We had an opportunity to read them again. Just open them up for a minute here. Hard to see it.
Or 4 items listed under your in your agenda under business arising from previous minutes. Item 1 was long-term service recognitions. Item 2, smoke and carbon monoxide program update. Number 3, fire master plan update, and then the return of the training position from the last meeting.
Okay, so you guys don't have anything?
I have nothing under, for me, under long-term service recognition, for sure. Yeah,
Under the long-term service recognition, that we got 2 firefighters that we wanted to present their 25-year medal in front of council. We're not handing them out at the Christmas party. That was gonna be done here, so gotta get that arranged.
So 225 years?
Yeah.
So you can book that through Aaron or whatever, whenever.
Really one of the council meetings and that they wanted to be done on that, so.
So,
That would be for, in front of full council, correct?
Yeah.
so like you say, you can book that, get it on the agenda through Aaron whenever you.
Kind of remember my boss.
Writing it down.
Hey, anything else on the award? So it's just 2, there's nobody else, right? We're all caught up now? Awesome. 4.2, smoke and carbon monoxide program update. Kristen, I believe that was yours.
Yes.
Anything to comment on?
So we're going through, oh yeah.
So before you were here, we had a couple of council meetings or a couple of committee meetings, sorry, regarding looking at updating. So I am not sure if you were able to go back and review those previous meetings to understand kind of where my thought process was at. This is something that obviously if we update the program, it needs to go, we have to endorse it, and then it would need to go to the council for approval. Because that is part of our bylaw, the application portion, if I'm correct there.
Terms of reference are not explicit in that manner, but yes, the practice is that new programs, positions, council staff reports are vetted at the committee prior to going to council.
And this is an update to the program.
Yeah, which would typically be vetted by the committee.
So we're in a process right now of doing up an entire fire prevention program policy. that will incorporate both the smoke alarm and carbon monoxide alarm programs. Currently, we're just looking at an April timeframe to do a smoke alarm campaign. And we'll be looking at probably, in coordination with Fire Prevention Week, doing a CO campaign. Realistically, what we're looking at is a double whammy. We're trying to catch kind of both during both campaigns. And that's kind of where we're sitting right now. I have had the opportunity to previously review those meetings that you did speak about, although I have to admit, it has been a while. We're gonna follow, as what we'll do is, once that paperwork is done up, of course, it'll be brought forward as a staff report for everyone to review. And including that, we will be enclosing, the fire marshal has a recommendation for how the program is supposed to be done, and that will be incorporated into that document.
Okay, so that's an overall program. In reference to the website and what we are posting on the website or social media. I guess website really is the only one, where there is a smoking carbon statements on there that really needed updating, and that's kind of where my focus was in those previous meetings. Like, for example, there's not a lot about carbons on there. Carbons have expiry dates. We're not educating the public on that aspect. So there were all kinds of things that were kind of went back and forth on.
I'm just writing something down. Yeah, I'll have to look, of course, at that stuff, but you're right, 100%. We are not doing that well of a job, and we proved that, unfortunately, with an event just after Christmas. So 100% right. That has to be looked at. The other point of that too, especially with the carbon monoxide programs, is the education piece that are surrounding it. We know that right now, yes, you're absolutely right. They do expire, and it is depending on the manufacturer. And right now if we respond to an incident at a home or a facility, we do a check to make sure that they have working smoke alarms as required and working COs. And if they're not, we're giving them an alarm and instructing it. We've had recent incidents where we walked into a home because of a complaint. The CO alarm was making some weird noises. They were directed to call 911. We were paged out. It turned out that their smoke alarms had been in place since 2003. So obviously we put in smoke alarms, combi systems, so the smoke alarm and CO detector, worked with the caregiver to make sure that they were installed properly. We're doing that with every home that we encounter to get us to kind of through to where we can get the formal program more formally set up. Right now, it is one of those things that's on my radar to do in the very near future.
Yes, this is something that I feel is probably of utmost importance for our due diligence, and as part of our responsibilities is that education piece in particular, and how we get it properly documented and on the website, and something that gives you a formal, or the firefighters a formal direction when they're going into these homes. You know, this is what we do. We supply a smoke, or we advise to go here to get a smoke, or we advise on this, things like that, so that everybody's on the same page. Like, to me, coming into this, I haven't seen anything that's well documented in that sense in the education portion.
You're completely right. I completely concur with you. That is part of the issue. There is no documentation when it comes to a lot of that stuff. That's something we're working through. The OFL, the Ontario Fire Marshal, has given a good outline on what we're supposed to do with a smoke alarm program. They've got issued a communique. Again, all three of us are assistant fire marshals, so we have a legal obligation to follow that communique, and that will be incorporated into the program in the spring.
I was just hoping we'd have something before tax bills went out, so we can get something, you know.
We have a pamphlet that we are going to look at putting out with the tax bills, but we have to just make sure and confirm it's updated. and then we'll go from there. But we have boxes of them, so we should be in good shape to do that.
So when you have all this, it'll come back to the committee and then council.
We should be able to, I should have a copy of that to issue, like what I'll do is I'll scan it electronically and send it out to everybody in the committee by email, so they can have a look at it.
Having the committee endorse newsletters before they go out is common practice. However, I think updating the website is something staff can do on their own to get moving forward on this, so at least we have a step forward already. So we will definitely sit down, Nicole and the fire chief and myself, and update that wording on the website and on our Facebook page to make sure people are aware the expiry of the smoke alarms and what to do if a smoke alarm or a CO2 alarm is making unexpected noises, etc.
Yes, and quite often, for example, carbon monoxide detectors and smoke detectors, they all have a series of beeps on them, and then they all usually have the instructions right on the rims or sides of them to say, if it's beeping this much, it means this. If it's beeping, you know, so on, right? It'll have its own SOS code type thing. You know, it's those little things that help people. I work a lot with smokes and carbons, so I can tell you it makes a big difference when you have that education piece out there.
Absolutely. We, and actually the landlord has a responsibility under the act, under the code, to ensure that they've actually issued their tenants with the instructions for that specific smoke alarm or CO alarm, and has to work with their tenants to ensure that they're educated. And this is something we're gonna be working on with some of our landlords in the area as well, and that work has already began in a more formal sense.
Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, Fire Prevention Month. When do we, just because I know we have people that are watching this, so it kind of as a reminder, when is that again?
Second week, it's usually the second week in October.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that was a good, good conversation, because as we all know, we've seen the letter that certainly involved carbon monoxide and just how important those alarms are. Can I just ask one question on that, Chief? If you have smoke alarms that are expired, but you've also put in updated smoke, can you still keep the old ones, or is it illegal to keep them?
There's nothing in the code that says you have to get rid of them, but if I come into your home or one of my staff comes into your home and you have expired smoke alarms, we're gonna recommend you get rid of them, because if you have a piece of equipment, it's supposed to be maintained. Right? So if you've got current smoke alarms, that's what we're looking for. And if you don't, and we happen to come in, we're probably gonna make sure you do before we leave.
Okay, because this is personal to myself, like, we have hardwired. Okay, but then that house was built 18 years ago. I put up a modern one just a year ago, just probably 3 feet from it. I thought, why tear that one out that's in the ceiling? It's all wired in there, and even to get it matched up, probably be a problem now.
And I would recommend, Mr. Chair, that you indeed bring an electrician in and get those properly changed over.
I'm the electrician, but okay,
A certified electrician.
yeah, okay.
But yes, if I were coming into your home and seeing those, that would be the exact conversation we would have.
Okay.
The reality here is, as equipment gets older, just like the rest of us, sometimes we make sounds that we don't necessarily want to hear. And in that case, with expired smoke alarms, they become more ineffective, as well as they'll start to make noise that people don't like, and then, or they'll drain batteries quicker, or a number of other things can happen, and then they become ineffective because people are creatures of habit. They tend to remove them. So
Fair enough, I'll get them changed out.
I would strongly recommend that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, I'm sure that I shouldn't say this, but a lot of homes that are 15 to 20 years old aren't tearing out their smoke alarms. Some may, but I can tell you that.
And again, that's,
You
you're going back to exactly what the counselor had said. We're talking about education.
Yeah.
And we definitely have some area to improve there.
Thank you. Okay, yes,
It's been all over the radio a lot about, well, it was, might have been during fire protection week in October. About 10 years is the absolute end date for smoke detectors. Whether they still function or not, it doesn't matter. It's 10 years. And your insurance company will also have involvement on your due diligence there as well. So that's important. Another aspect of the education. But part of it really has different expiry dates to requirements, so that, I think that's important.
Well, I think the new ones that I put up, I think in 10 years, they start to beep, that's it, they run out of steam.
We have smart technology. Bottom line is, any type of fire notification, fire protection device you put in your home or anywhere else has to be installed and maintained as per the recommendations of the manufacturer. So that's what it comes down to, and the code's quite clear on that factor.
Okay, moving on, next item there, 4.4. Creation of position of training coordinator, Wyoming. 3 or 4. Oh, fire master plan, sorry. Yeah. I don't know if the chief wants to speak anything on that right now.
Yeah, I think, if I may, Mr. Chair, I think that the best thing we do, I'd like to bring a staff report to the next meeting as to where we're specifically sitting within the master plan. If that's acceptable to the committee, that's what I would propose.
Yeah, sounds like a plan, okay. We'll just move on to 4.4 there, creation of position of training coordinator within the Plympton-Wyoming Fire Department. And to move this into discussion, I'll just bring up here that we had a deferred motion back in the 8th of or 3rd of January. I'll just read it to you and then I'll read you the new one. That the report by Eric Campbell, Plympton-Wyoming Fire Chief, dated January the 3rd, 2024, regarding the creation of a training division and the position of Division Chief of Training Chief in the Plympton-Wyoming Fire Department will be received to the Fire Exec Committee, supports proposals for staff to bring it forward to the council. So that was deferred, but we now have a new discussion that's going to take place tonight with a new motion,
Amended motion.
It's
the same motion in principle, but coming back as different.
So we will, that was moved by Gary Atkinson, second by Kristen Rodriguez, a new one. So we can open the discussion on that, and the other one we will just do away with. If that's okay with the committee.
With me.
Okay,
What?
who wants to- Chief, do you want to start this off and
Absolutely. Can you bring it up, Nicole?
we'll have the chief open it up and bring in the discussion.
So we've made some amendments, obviously, with the fact that we were going down the road of mandatory certification the 1st of July, 2026, now leaving us basically less than 29 months to get there. There's a lot to this, so we've, as chiefs and as senior staff for the department, we've kind of said, okay, we need somebody to kind of coordinate this that has a certain level of expertise in the area. So this is where this position came about. Nicole, can you go to page 8 on that report? You have to go all the way down or up, whatever you. I get confused.
So page 8 of the staff report.
Page 8 of the staff report. It should say 8 of 30, I think. In the bottom corner. That's all the old stuff. Wait.
Too
No,
far.
you're way too far. It'd be easier,
Bottom left corner.
page 13, so you're about 5 pages past reading.
I found it.
Here we go.
Right on. So Annex A. So again, just to touch on this. We have a couple things. One is our current training system, which we'll get into a little bit later on. Our current weekly training system has to be modified. The current system does not take into account a lot of the members who work shift work and other things, whereas there's a strong possibility that we have members that are missing key training. So we must shift our skills, like, so there's one side, which is the training side, the weekly training side, and then the other side is the certification side. Now, the weekly training side is where we maintain those certifications and skill sets. That has to change to a more equitable version. So that means we have to make arrangements with, so that there's more opportunities for people who work shift work and other things to attend training. It's not their fault, they have to work. And we want them on the department, right? They prove we have a lot of great folks that we don't necessarily see it in training too often, but I can tell you, if the tones go during the day, because they work a lot of nights, they're the first ones on the truck, right? So we need to provide a more equitable background to keeping those people current through weekly training. So that's one part of this, which we'll look at a little bit further. Then we go down and we'll look at the actual current situation where we are. So next page, Nicole, please. So right now, these are the certifications that are mandatory under the Act for us. So a firefighter has to do NFPA firefighter 2, NFPA 1072 hazmat ops, which is, we used to call it the damming and diking course. You dam things and you dike, you fill dikes and all that stuff. And then your pump ops. Now, because it is part of all members to have their DZ as part of their condition of employment, then they would all be considered having the ability to operate the pumper. So therefore, everybody has to be 1002 or pump ops qualified. All right, fire officer, because they call it something a little bit different in the Act, but essentially they're a fire officer. Again, NFPA, the fire service officer level 1 mandatory, NFPA 1041 fire service instructor level 1 mandatory, plus all your firefighter certifications. All right, Nicole, bring to just where it says where is, can you bring, where is PFD? Okay, so this is where we're kind of sitting right now. All right, we have a couple members that are on long-term leave because they've been fortunate enough to be picked up by career departments. So likelihood is we're probably going to end up replacing them too. So we are sitting with 51 members and 9 vacant positions. So we have a lot of folks right now that have, generally speaking, that when we pick up new folks, we're looking at about 50%, 45% that aren't even certified at the minimum level of firefighter 2. We're looking at quite a few people that have to do the hazmat ops portion. And we're looking at 46 members that currently require pump ops. So that is a very staggering number.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. But it's 8 positions, correct, that are vacant?
No, we have 7 positions that are vacant and we have 2 members that are on long-term leave. So we're right now looking at approximately 9 vacant positions.
Because you wrote, it says 6 vacant positions at the North Hall and 2 at the South Hall.
That,
So that's 8 vacant.
okay, that may be my mix-up on numbers and I apologize. But long-term right now, we're gonna look at likely, it's a 50-50 shot whether we're gonna get the folks back from long-term leave, right? What often happens is, and it's not a bad thing to lose firefighters to full-time departments, that really shows that we're a quality department and we're doing a great job of, if nothing else, prepping folks to move on to that next level. I think it's a welcome sight. Certainly, likelihood is that they will not return to us, but we've given them that leave for the length of their probation to give them that option. So we have to plan they're not coming back. So that's what we're going to look at with our training side. So I'm just going to continue down the list. We're down at, nope, not done, quite done that chart, Nicole. Yeah, perfect. So NFPA 1021, basically half of our, and 1041, basically half of our officers are not currently certified. So 50% of our officer cadre are employees that are not certified, and we currently have 1 officer that does not even have a DZ license. All right, if we could continue to the next page, Nicole.
1 second, Eric.
1 second, please, and thank you.
Back you up to there, chief, just a question on this pump ops.
Yes, sir.
Figure is staggering 46. How, I just don't understand you. How could that be that
Well,
Like, did something change that everybody has to be?
well, the reality here is because of the way we set it up, the legislation says that anybody who could potentially be a pump operator would have to have pump ops. That means any member of this department, as DZ as part of their conditions of employment, would then have to be pump ops qualified.
So how have we missed it for so long that we didn't?
That I can't speak of, sir.
Okay, because I don't, that's new to me. Go ahead, Gary.
Chair, through you to the chief, just a quick question. Your fire officer that you described there, does that include your lieutenants and your captains?
That's correct, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, because we have a it's generally 1-to-5 ratio. 1 officer to 5 firefighters is generally the ideal number. Of course, that ratio being smaller is always good too. So, yeah, that's where we're sitting right now. Can we go on to the next one, Nicole? I think the next page is where I'd like to go. So we talk about, okay, first of all, the first chart, I apologize. That number is incorrect. We had 46, we should have been that number, but anyway. This is kind of where we're sitting with the reality of the numbers when it comes to if we bring on new members and they're not certified. Now, the question was posed to me the other day about training hours. This is where it gets dicey, and this is why the training coordination is so, coordinator's position is so crucial. We have 72 hours to qualify a firefighter, a brand new firefighter with approximately thereabouts with firefighter level 2, which is mandatory under the act. We then have another 8-hour day to do hazmat ops. So that's a total of an 80-hour course because usually they're married. Those two courses come together. Then we have another 40 hours approximately to do pump ops. When the problem with pump ops right now is there's a bit of a issue with getting qualified instructors to get us to teach, which we're going to talk about a little bit further. Then we have another 40 hours for the fire service officer, and the fire service instructor takes potentially 16 hours. Now, some of these courses are hybrid. It means you're doing them online and you're doing them in person, which can save us, but we still have to look at it as that's the total amount of commitment that we're going to have to look at. What does all this mean? It means that we're looking at, to get a fully functional fire officer at the other end, we're looking at 176 hours of training thereabouts. That doesn't include DZ licensing, which can be reflective on how quickly someone picks up their ability to drive those vehicles. And first aid and CPR and emergency medical response, medical training. That's just for the certification side. That has nothing to do with weekly training. All right. For the rest of this, I want you to kind of keep weekly training as column A and certification as column B, and think of them as two different streams. All right. There's also other commitments. So if we can move down closer to that bottom chart, Nicole, please. You're going to see training officers. We have a couple of training officers currently on staff, right? They also need additional training over and above that 176 hours training, which for us as fire instructor level 1, they already would have to get there. So then again, another fire instructor level 2. This allows them to also assist us with conducting live fire training, which, as you know, in the master plan was recommended to be done annually. All right. If we have, right now, I'm filling the fire inspection and prevention role, but if we eventually too, we're fortunate. I am lacking one qualification in which I'm currently taking the course, which is the second part of the fire and life safety educator. But otherwise, I meet those requirements. If we do bring in someone which eventually we'd like to do is have some depth within our fire prevention role, having people wearing 2 hats, kind of thing, cross-training them, maybe as inspectors. Ideally speaking, that would be one way of looking at it. Again, those certifications that are now mandatory under the act. You can continue to go down, Nicole, please. All right. So let's talk about new recruits for a second. All right. It says initial training and orientation for new recruits. So working with the officers, we've come up with some certain things that we have to do. One of them is everybody who joins Plympton-Wyoming Fire Department will do a mandatory orientation. No matter if they're experienced or not. They will be bringing on to a new department, they must do a mandatory certification or mandatory orientation. We have two streams. If we hire somebody, we have what we call the skilled probationary firefighter and the unskilled probationary firefighter. Just like it sounds, your skilled one is one who's already qualified and certified, and your unskilled is someone who's not. Judging by a lot of the applications we're currently seeing, the majority of the folks that are gonna come into us are gonna fall under that unskilled category. All right, the skilled stream, of course, that gets into that a bit more detail, but we don't want to get into that too much. You have the report in front of you. Next page, please, Nicole. I think that's where we're at. Yep. All right, so I want to talk quickly about the deadlines and the timelines. As you all know, we have till the 1st of July to get everybody where they need to be. It is achievable, however, there's a few snippets we need to talk about. The RTC. We can go down just where it says timelines, Nicole. Put that at the top. So the RTC is the Regional Training Center. When the Fire College in Gravenhurst got closed, they shifted to a regional training center model. The regional training center for us is Plympton College. In the past, it has not been utilized as well as it could be. Plympton-Wyoming Fire Department kind of took the lead here and reached out to a couple of our partners to our surrounding areas and said to the chiefs, what can we do here? We need to bring the RTC back. The reality of the situation is that we're a small department. We've got 2 halls, but the bigger centers like St. Clair and Lambton Shores, they have a number of halls, right? So for us to justify bringing the RTC back just for Plympton-Wyoming, it's not going to work. So we needed those partners in, and we've since had some meetings. And what that means is that because of that, we're going to start doing what they call shadowing of training. So, well, and we'll get into that a little further down in the document. All right, Nicole, if you can go forward to, well, we've already touched on that. Oh, perfect. Actually, just leave it right there. All right, so this is what we want to do for timelines when we bring on a new member. We're looking right now to do recruiting in a reasonable number. And the reason we are going with this training coordinator position is we need somebody to kind of carry the torch with this stuff. There's a lot here. As you saw, there's over 120 hours of training just to bring somebody on a point where we can hand them a pager, right? And then not be a liability from an Occupational Health and Safety Act, right? So that all has to be coordinated. It has to be coordinated with outside vendors, outside areas such as the RTC, and ensuring that all of that is properly documented, right? We're looking at right now hiring people, and we're kind of thinking about doing a spring and a fall recruitment and slowly bringing our numbers up 3 or 4 at a time, which is manageable for us, right? Because there's, again, only 1 full-time employee, all right? So what will happen is we'd look at April to June to do a recruitment. In June, they would come in, they would start their orientation. Right, again, the training coordinator will be looking after a lot of this. They'd be starting out their orientation that all members will go through. And then in that July, August timeframe, we can start them into things like DZ training, getting that stuff arranged, first aid, CPR for those that don't have it. That way in August, when the online portion of the firefighter 2 program comes on, they'll be able to start into that. And then in September, they will go to the RTC to start their weekend training to get them where they need to be for their firefighter 2. Then at the other end of that, we'll then have a certified firefighter coming out at the end of it, that then they get handed their pager and they're on staff. And that allows us to then incorporate them into platoons and all that for responsibilities. It gives us it gives us some time, but it also keeps it flowing. And we have to realize that this is not going to stop. This is probably going to be an annual thing where we're going to be bringing people on. The turnover in the paid on call and volunteer role is around typically 3 to 5 years is how long we get them. And then they move on to something else. They have families. Something happens in their lives where they're done. So, and that's all good. At least they did their time and we appreciate their service. but we are gonna have a bit of a revolving door when it comes to bringing in certain people. You've got your core folks like, like the DCs here and stuff. They're well set in, they're part of the community, that it's not something new, but when we bring on really young people, which is what's available to us, that kind of happened. All right, so again, then we'll be looking down at we're gonna look at a new attendance policy, which it's not a policy as per se, it'll be in line with the town's corrective action policy. And then it'll be an equitable approach to attendance. So then we'll probably see some people fall off the radar, they'll move on to other things because their attendance isn't quite where it needs to be. Then we'll be looking again at bringing on more people. So then we have a spring hire and a fall hire. Again, that all has to be coordinated or training, right? Then January to March, we're probably looking at running another firefighter 2 and hazmat 1072 for those folks. All right, so that's the new recruitment in a nutshell. If you can move the current employees to the top there where it says current employee. So what do we do with the guys that we've got now? We currently have a lot of folks that need training. All right, and what does that mean? Well, it means that we need to start doing things. Certain things we've been able to do online, like the Ontario Fire College has a great line-on program. DC Freer is using it right now. He's completing, I think you're doing 2 and 6, and he just completed the legislation course. They really do have a good online program, and it's good price. It costs us $65, right? And he walks away with his seal at the end, right? So excellent, right? DC Jordan's going to be coming along the same thing. These folks have some mandatory training that they're going to have to do this year. They're working on it. A lot of that stuff is online. That's great for them, but that doesn't help us with the folks that need firefighter 2, fire officer, and these things. So the RTC has a job shadowing. So they're owned and, well, I shouldn't say owned. Their rules that they conduct themselves is done through the Ontario Fire College. So how they operate, that means all their instructors have to be approved by the Ontario Fire College to teach. Right now they have one instructor that's approved to teach. So part of this course that we're running in the fall is to have a couple of our officers shadow that instructor. And that once they shadow the instructor, they participate limited and stuff like that, then the OFC signs them off so that they can teach. And it builds our instructor cadre for the RTC. The more people we shadow, the more people we bring on as instructors, the more broad-based courses we can run. Again, that takes coordination, right? So it's gonna take some time. 2024 is the start to 2025 being a bull ride, trying to get where we need to be. All right. If we go to the next page, I think we're good there. I don't want to get into patrol, just first aid and CPR. So as you all know, first aid CPR is mandatory. Again, somebody needs to coordinate that. All right, so we look at the first aid CPR has to be done. Excuse me, has to be done every 3 years with annual recertification on CPR. Annual recertification can be worked into our weekly training program, right? But the full on courses cannot, they will not work. We have to have separate courses for that. Again, they have to be coordinated. The EFR program, the Emergency First Responder Program, again, it's a 40-hour certification. It has to be coordinated. So over the next little while, and it gets into it further in the report, I won't beat a dead horse, but the idea here is that we're going to consistently train a certain amount of people every year. And then as they get, like the folks that were done this year, in 3 years' time, they'll be looking at being redone for their 3-year time frame. So it's a consistent program. The cost doesn't change a whole lot from year to year, and we're constantly keeping people who are current. And it's a constant flow. Again, that needs to be coordinated.
Let me just ask you a question there on the first aid and the CPR.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the opening line says currently Plympton-Wyoming Fire Department lacking proper records regards to certification in first aid and CPR. The Red Cross, who most of the counselors have had their training through, they kept records of us being trained. So they don't keep records for the firemen?
We had no records on site. And actually it was DC and Freer that, and you, I think, remember to, you wanna respond on how we got to a point? Anyway, we did dig back through and we're trying to find out where we were. And the majority of the records that we had from the previous instructors showed that the majority of our folks were expired. But we had nothing on site that said that. So now, as we've done, thanks to Captain General out at Kamlaki, working with Will Davidson, we've been fortunate enough to get that gap filled. And moving forward with that. In the future, we're going to keep those records on site, as well as the, of course, the third party provider will have it as well. At the end of the day, I need to be able to produce it. So if we have an incident where the MOL comes in, and this is more so from even an internal injury within the organization, I have to be able to show that the person that did that first aid training was quite properly certified. Right, so.
So just a quick question on that. So basically everybody carries them on them, their certification cards. So that's how you figured out who's who and
No, we're maintaining records. Each person will have a training file with paper.
I understand that, what's going to happen, but what didn't happen, I get. And how you figured out who has them and who doesn't. At the end of the day, they all carry them with them, their certification, correct?
No, there's nothing mandatory that requires them
I
to.
don't carry it.
Well, that's interesting. I know, like with my technicians,
I worked at Pearl Hall, I had certifications and kinds like this, I didn't carry them in my wallet.
And if I may, through the chair, I understand where you're coming from with your particular background. The Security Guard Act requires they carry their first starter license.
we won't do security guards, sorry. It's working in construction, let's just say. Technicians working in construction, any skilled trade. They all have to have their certification cards on them at all times, because at any time, a Ministry of Labor or whoever can pop in and say, hey, show me that you're qualified to be on this job site. So you have to have those valid certification cards with you at all times. So I'm just asking from that perspective.
It's kind of like one of those things, right? Our guys respond to a medical call or respond to an incident. They don't necessarily, take their cards out, and put them in their bunker gear.
They're not saying,
But yeah, absolutely. Well, if they're working within the confines of the fire hall doing training or anything, we're gonna have paper copies of it there that we can produce to the Ministry of Labor right away.
And I know in previous years, all the health and safety instructors to see, first aid instructors, they would provide you a wallet card. Most instructing groups have gone away from that. And most times the Ministry of Labor are accepting, within reasonable amount of time producing the documents. So us as an employer are responsible to ensure that our employees are properly trained. So we're required to keep that physical file, and we're slowly getting away from the wallet cards because of that. Because it's our responsibility to confirm our employees are the ones who are qualified to do the work.
well, that's interesting, because it doesn't exist that way where I am. They're not getting away from it. What they are doing is they're
He's 17.
giving cards with QR code. So literally the QR code will have a list of all their certificates. So they still always have to have that available, ready. But it's just the way it's, instead of a bunch of cards.
Every Ministry of Labor inspector and every industry is somewhat differently looked at, so.
Yeah.
But we do keep all of ours on file. Our
Yeah.
staff don't typically keep them on hand, on their body.
No, you're right. We do that as well too. We keep them on copies on hand as well, because you want to be able to produce that for sure.
Go ahead, Chief.
All right, so I just really want to quickly, 17. I want to talk about weekly training too. Like we talked about earlier, we're talking about a more equitable approach. This training has to have a curriculum designed and maintained. Again, that has to be built from scratch based upon our risks and needs. Right now, just to send one gentleman in, or sorry, one firefighter or one employee, I should say, into a hot zone at a structural firefight, that's external only, like not going inside the building. We're looking at a mandatory to keep current with all your certifications and training, just for that simple thing of approximately 20 hours. right? That doesn't include anything specialized such as auto extrication, interior firefighting, depending on what it is. There's all those other things that are outside that. So just to keep one firefighter so that they can respond and stand outside with a hose, we're looking at about approximately 20 hours annually. All right. On top of that, right, we have firefighters right now that don't make training. Whether it's because of personal reasons or because of work reasons or whatever, they're not making it. So we have to provide them with an opportunity that's equitable in our approach. So obviously DC Freer's circumstances aren't gonna be the same as mine. DC Jordan's circumstances are completely different. DC Jordan has a lot more spare time than DC Freer does, well, except in golfing season, right? So again, those type of things have to be looked at in our approach to annual training and recertification skills. All right, again, so that means that we have to approach it from an equitability standpoint. That means DC Freer isn't necessarily going to be able to do 50 hours, but what DC Freer can do is 35 hours. And it's the quality and the certifications we're able to turn out in that time that will base upon his circumstances, because his individual learning parameters could be very different than another's. Right? So that's how we have to look at weekly training now. Again, it takes a special person to understand that level of training. Typically they're a training officer level 3. And 1041 level 3, where they learn to design, build curriculums. They do learn all that great stuff. All right, and we can go down, Nicole, I think to. Let me just get with you here. All right, so we're gonna talk about annual training required by all, so page 19 at the bottom. So these are, to give you an idea of what subjects we're talking about covering every year. This has to be done. Now, why is this important? And here's a perfect example, and I spoke to someone else earlier today by email. EV cars. If we only use our annual weekly training from certification, we would not get the proper training on EV electric vehicles, right? Because the current process of certification doesn't delve heavily into that. That's a new risk that's why this training is so important. And by having a person that coordinates it and understands the specialties that are required there and the risks that are changing is so key for this aspect, right? We can go down this. This isn't all of them, by the way, that they continue on to the next page.
So interesting enough, you've just done that EV vehicle thing, and I think the mayor sent us all the video of the electric vehicle in the garage. So it looks to me like very clearly the approach is always with fresh air equipment on any of that EV stuff, and you've seen the blanket they threw over the thing, and it still,
by the way.
yeah, and it still didn't even stop it burning. They took it to the scrapyard, and the thing was still smoldering and deadly. They didn't even approach it there without a fresh air self-contained breathing apparatus. So you're absolutely right. That is a specialty, and there's getting to be more and more of those vehicles around, and they're dangerous. So.
Well, and if I may, Mr. Chair, the big thing here is that we don't understand that threat fully yet. And that's why having somebody in a training coordinator position, working with the training officers, keeping on top of that stuff, that information as it comes in. There's certainly, here's an example. The other day we had a 2-vehicle MVC, and one of the vehicles turned out to be an electric vehicle. Well, the tow truck operator just wanted to get it hooked up and haul it out of there, right? The tow truck operator, God bless them, they do great jobs, and I would not want to do their jobs. There's not enough money in the world, right? But they don't fully understand what they're getting. We don't know if that battery pack on that vehicle was impacted. So we have a process we got to go through, right? Which we just learned, and now we're in the process of teaching everyone, right? And to ensure that that battery pack is not compromised, because you're exactly right. If that battery pack becomes compromised, it could end up in thermal runaway. It's on the back of a truck halfway through Petrolia and the whole truck's on fire, right? So that's a great example of why we need to do this. There's also other training that we have to do annually. The officers need to do ICS and a number of other things. There's training that happens every couple of years. Pump ops, we want to review every couple of years, but again, that certification piece is separate from that. You know, things like report writing, note taking. We're now getting called into civil suits more than we ever have been in the past. So our ability to document things is becoming extremely important. And unfortunately, when you're sitting on the stand in uniform, the court system doesn't necessarily see you as a volunteer paid on call. They just see you as a representative of the municipality. And they will be very going towards getting you the information they want. All right, so again, we need to have that awareness. If we can go down to where it says training topics by guidance by month. So just, this again continues on the next page, just to give you an idea of what we're kind of doing. And then, so what does that mean? What does it mean if we choose firefighter survival, for example? That means that there has to be a lesson plan done, a proper lesson plan done with some sort of evaluation. And so there's a whole long explanation in this documentation of how we generate lesson plans. There has to be some sort of way of saying, yep, you've met the requirements of that training, that you were physically involved. We have folks that come to training, but they don't necessarily get physically involved. We need to show that from a employer standpoint, that that person was physically engaged in the training and got the knowledge so that we can say that they're competent in that role, right? Again, this is where that training coordinator comes in, because we're looking at 3 to 4 hours of work to 1 hour of instruction. So that includes setup, preparation, paperwork on the back end and on the front end, all of that. So if our firefighters are doing, say, 2 hours of training, probably that officer or the training officer that's doing that training that night is probably put 3 to 4 hours of prep work into that. And that needs to be understood as well. That's how specialized we're getting. It's one of those things, right? You know, we're asking a lot of these folks. All right. I don't want to spend a whole much more time on this, but the reality here is that if you've read the reports, you see that we're looking at not only from an annual retraining, keeping current with that stuff. We need that side of things brought into bear. But one other point with the certification is that's going to require a lot of outside coordination. And again, that's not going away. I think that was just, once we've established, it's just going to be a cycle that continues through. Nicole, there is this section here I wanted to briefly touch on. I think it's on the next page, say training documentation. Right on. So I put something in here, and I've been fortunate enough in my past, I actually know the chief that was the chief of Meaford when all this went down. And so in September 9th, 2009, 2 firefighters went in to do a search. They had to, they thought somebody was trapped. What does that mean? Well, not a big deal. We do this all the time, right? Well, we don't do it all the time, but we do it fairly regularly, right? Not a big deal, except when they went in, for some reason, something went wrong. They ended up running out of air. And one of them was actually considered vital signs absent when he left. Now, long-term, great news. He came to in the ambulance on the way to the emergency room, all of that. Meaford was charged under 6 different charges under the Ministry of Labor, under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. They spent a considerable amount of their money defending against that. What saved them in the end was documentation. That the training had been done and been done in a manner that was proper, and they had all the documentation. When you go into these events, you think the Ontario Fire Marshal and Ministry of Labor is there to, they're not there to, they're not your friends. That's been quite clearly shown. So again, we need somebody to help us and coordinate and make sure all that documentation is being maintained. Meaford spent over $600,000 in lawyer fees, and it affected their reserve for years to come. All right, defending that. Now, the right thing was to defend it, because in the end, they did what was right. But a lot of money and a lot of time. And then that department had to go through that. Not only did they have the trauma of watching their buddies come out of there, one of them lifeless, come out of that building, but then to have it hanging over their head with the Ministry of Labor trying to say they did something wrong, when they really didn't. So we start getting into training, we start getting into this records and the specialization. It's important we understand that lesson, because could that happen again? 100%. Unfortunately, that's the reality of the risk that we take doing this job. Are we prepared? We're not there yet. We definitely will be with the evolution of this role. All right, so do I think that as a department, do I think we have an achievable goal by July 1st, 2026? I 100% think we can do it. But it's just a lot. We need somebody that has the specialty, that has the current contacts, that has the folks there that can coordinate all that. And that's where that training coordinator's position comes in. And as we'll find that it's going to be indispensable, and as a position will only continue to pay us back in dividends full. Any questions about it?
First of all, that's exactly what we needed. In-depth discussion here. It kind of brings it all together. I think it probably has sparked a few questions, no doubt about it. So I'll start off by letting the committee members. Any questions at all?
Shorter ones probably. Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Rodriguez.
You're welcome.
Three things. Just for clarity, the training coordinator. We still have a training officer in Wyoming and one in Kalaki. So you'll have a department basically of three.
Through the chair, absolutely. So we will have three people. It won't be a separate division. They'll still be working. But what, for the matter of training aspects, the two training officers who are rank of captain that are currently in place, they will remain in place. They'll just be responsible to the training coordinator for matters of training and certification.
So you got three, not two. I probably thought there was going to be the TO in one of the stations would be the head trainer, but I understand yours.
It's just, if I may, your worship, it is a lot for and we're asking these folks to do it on a part-time basis.
All right, that's question one. I was intrigued by a notice that North Middlesex Fire Department has been added to our neighboring municipalities, because we do know we have St. Clair to the south, we have Warwick to the east, and we also have Lambton Shores to the north, but I was kind of surprised why we would have North Middlesex, which is
They were
municipality away.
absolutely, they were interested in getting on board with the training. So that's why they're numbers to help us out. It provides additional, again, we'll have folks from North Middlesex shadow. And again, that will provide more depth to our RTC.
Okay, and my third one, I noticed in the report, there's in your presentation as well, you've shared about fire inspectors bringing on more people to train for fire inspection. As we all know, that was part of your job description as well, when we brought you on board to do that. I think you've been working towards that and getting out and doing that more. I think you probably looking down the road that to see where your numbers are, that in case you have to bring somebody in to help you or train somebody, because we've been before, I believe the history will show that we had to hire outside training or outside inspectors. And that was one of the things that we wanted to try to avoid doing as well. I have nothing against training people, but figuratively, you are the lead on this, and you're the person that we wanted on it, Chief.
If I may, through the chair, absolutely. So the trick here, it's not about whether or not we're training somebody to do a full-time position or anything like that. What it is there's folks out there that would like to get into that world, right? They want to get into the fire inspection stuff, and once they've done that, they want to find it. They find it interesting. It would be great to have those folks on board to come, 1 or 2 days, a month or whenever they're capable, come along for the inspections, learn more about it. And then long-term, if we end up growing, we have the ability there with some depth of people who are already have that knowledge base that can go out and do that on a part-time basis. The community is growing, as you know, at 6.6% per year. We're one of the fastest growing municipalities in Lambton County. Especially in the north end of Kamlaki area. So there will be a time where we're going to need extra help on that side as well. So this is more of a succession planning idea, as well as helping those that are interested get better trained to assist that. That would not replace me in that role. It would just simply be an addition as we move forward, as we grow.
All right, that concludes my questions, but one comment, I want to thank the DCs. I know they were the ones that brought forth this idea, and thank you both for that. I think it's very well needed for the future as we move forward, and thanks, guys, appreciate that. That's all I have, Mr. Chair, and I would like to thank Councilor Rodriguez for the opportunity to jump in, whatever. Thank you.
Perfect. Might want to have a snooze while that's my question.
Is lunch ready?
Go ahead, Councillor Christian Rodriguez.
Thank you. I'd also like to say thank you for bringing this all forward because it is really important, obviously, to get this done. I did present you with several questions through an email. You did answer some, but not others.
Just let me pull up the email if you would, Counselor.
I
Shoot.
think everybody probably has it now, right?
The only two wouldn't be the DCs, they would not have it.
My apologies, I wasn't trying to keep anybody out of the loop, I was just asking questions. So a safety officer you had stated already exists, and then this training coordinator, this new position would also have that ability to also be a safety officer. So it's just adding to their portfolio basically of something that already exists. So in saying that, that's kind of the way I took it. You said it's not a new position. And the safety officer is not a new position.
It's, I guess, more considered like a duty versus a position.
Oh, sorry,
It's not a role that you would
duty.
assume on scene,
Oh, okay.
as opposed to like,
Well, it's not a regular position.
yeah, it would be a role that you would fulfill at an incident,
Okay,
as
thank
opposed to a permanent position.
That's
that does make it much clearer for me. Thank you.
It's very common for training officers and training coordinators within fire departments to fulfill that role on fires.
Okay, thank you. So in the organization chart, you originally had one on the January 3rd where you had the two district chiefs and then this new training coordinator lined up underneath the fire chief there. Where is this? I didn't see a new organization chart,
We
or
didn't,
position chart or role chart or.
we're not creating, if I may, we're not creating a new division. They're just, we're creating a new position with, when it comes specifically to training and certification, the two training officers will be coordinated through the training coordinator. Right? They'll still be captains working for the DCs. But when it comes to like things like lesson plans and when it comes to coordinating all that stuff, they will be responsible through the training coordinator.
Yeah, so it's like administration portion of it.
Sort of, yeah. Essentially, what we're doing is the gentleman then, or sorry, the person that is successful in becoming the training coordinator would then make sure that do exactly as the title says, coordinate those training through those two TOs at either hall and just making sure we're hitting.
Yep. Thank you. So on question 2, I was asking for kind of a breakdown of the cost associated with this new position. So the baseline looks like it's the 3,780 plus the 1,600, because that's your baseline. And that only included 15 hours per month, which obviously is not inclusive of training, formal training policy, record creation, engagement scheduling, individual personnel meetings, travel and other expenses related to those aspects of the job functions. And you stated that is clearly an unknown.
If I may. One of the reasons we want this position is so that our training officers who are currently doing a lot of that, get that coordination to give them a bit of relief. And so when you're talking about hours with one person, we're not talking about one person. We're currently paying two training officers to do it, right? The training coordinator would then be part of that in ensuring that it's done. So now when it comes to those duties, instead of it being distributed through two people, it's gonna be distributed through three. So if you look at the way that breaks down, then theoretically, unless of course something comes up, of course, as we get down the road of certification, there's certain things that we can't predict. But they should only have to work those particular hours. Again, it's also part of work-life balance. These folks also have other jobs. That means that I don't anticipate them to be there any more than a couple days per month.
Okay, thank you. So please know when I'm asking these questions that I'm not, it's not, you have to, clearly this needs to happen, so I just want to make that clear. I'm just trying to,
You have to speak up. I'm sorry, I have hearing loss in this ear.
okay, so I'm not trying to ask questions with the why should we have this? I'm just asking questions because I'm just looking for more understanding of how it all comes together. Okay, so
You were-
keeping that in mind,
Sorry, go ahead.
so basically what you're saying there is, like, to me, it seemed like there was more duties gonna go on these training officers as part of putting this all into place. Does
Well,
that sound fair?
their duties are going to be aligned with training and with that, and absolutely, there's gonna be more duties, but having said that, there's also things that they're not gonna have to do at all. For example, if the mayor works for me as a training officer and I'm the training coordinator, I'm gonna give the mayor a list of topics that I need lesson plans derived for, or something like that. My job is to coordinate it. It'll be up to the mayor to do that, but now these guys are looking at coordination, they're doing that, all of that as well, plus the hours of actually generating those plans. So now that role goes into more of at the hierarchy of making sure that that's done, right? Coordinating that, filling those gaps that we can't otherwise fill right now. And that's why those hours are approximate and they may change, could be less. It could be more, but generally speaking, the plan is approximately 2 days a month. All right. The training coordinator then also would be doing other things, right? But for the most part, he's just that role is coordinating. They're not physically going out and actually doing the training.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're gonna look at those hours, you have to look at them in incorporation of 3 people doing a role that 2 people are now doing. Right? So it's not comparing apples to apples.
Okay, thank you. So my third question was in relation to on page 8 of 30 in the report. It was noted currently 2 nights per month. Now, this is just for your ongoing training, which I clearly understand is separate from new certification. It was noted currently 2 nights per month at 5 hours are currently allocated for training hours. And then this is proposed to increase to 3 nights per month. But total training hours only increased to 6 hours per month. So you've added a night. And I understand what you're saying. You've made it flexible by adding the 3rd night a month because of shift workers, not everybody can make any particular one, so I get that. It's just increasing a night, but only adding 6 hours. I don't understand how you're gonna accomplish that. The flexibility side of it, does that make?
So that 3rd night right now is traditionally used for maintenance night. All right, so we use that night. The duty platoon comes in, does their truck checks and everything else. What we're doing now is changing that over to a training night. Again, you set it to offer flexibility. So if we do that, then we have to still allow for truck checks. So instead of using 1 platoon to check all the trucks in 1 night, take an hour and a half to do that, we're using all platoons on a regular training night to do that in a half an hour time frame, accomplishing the same thing. Many hands, light work. So that takes that 2.5 hours that we normally would do training down to 2. Adding that 3rd night then gives us 6. So yes, you're only getting 1 additional hour of training, which again, keeps our costs at a reasonable, our wage, our hourly rates and all that stuff are, that's the word I'm looking for.
That works.
Right, and at a reasonable cost, right, but still providing that depth for an equitable opportunity for other people to attend training. And on top of that, we've also incorporated a Sunday once a month that will be set aside, depending on the flexibility of those that need it, where they can come back and we can set it up so that they can come in and actually physically make up the time that they've forgotten.
Mhm.
Or sorry, weren't able to make, forgotten's a bad word, but weren't able to make. And on top of that, and that won't happen every month. There may be months that we don't need it. There may be months that we need two, but that's providing that equitable depth to the training. The current training curriculum, the weekly training program, doesn't offer any of that. That's why we've gone to this way. Again, it comes down to what works for the individual to get them where they need to be.
And my apologies for asking questions on this, but you know, my understanding in previous meetings, like probably a year ago, was that this was happening, that weekends were being offered, that there were shift workers, that it was recognized. So, you know, my understanding was kind of that flexibility was already in play, but it doesn't sound like it was.
This is just formalizing it more. We're now getting in a position where it's gonna be formalized and it'll also be tracked. So again, we have to, before we go down the road, and I hate to say this, but before we go down the road of someone being considered no longer competent, we have to show them every opportunity to create that level of competency.
Sure. I just thought it was already there, so I was a little bit surprised. The next one. It was on the same page 8, so I was just having a little problem with the math. So I was just trying to understand.
Give me an email at the same time here.
So it was question 4.
Yeah.
It was noted that recertification training requires 20 hours per year. It is noted that 120 hours of new training was required to meet the 2026 deadline. But then when you refer to the chart, training hours required, the total of each requirement is 136. So, and then you say there's a total of 120 plus 56. So I'm trying to place.
I'm not sure where you're seeing it. That's the problem. But
So on page 8,
hold on, let me pull that up. So we're talking about mandatory training. When we were talking about,
it might be just the way everything's laid out.
so you do understand that, and when I wrote this in, and I just want to, and I'm asking because I don't know. We talked like the total amount of hours that we've got written for that 29-month period. They're not annual periods.
Yes, I'm aware of that. And I do state that in my question.
Yeah.
But I am aware that it's 20 hours annually. Required for your annual recertifications or.
That's bare bones.
Yes, I'm aware, thank you. So, but then you go to, I don't know if I got on the right page yet. But then you state on page 9, sorry. Find it. Where you talk about the 120, sorry, it was page 10.
So if I may,
So how many training hours are required? So this is for the new certification, correct? So that total of that chart is 136 hours. That's required to do that new training. Is that correct?
Phil, where I don't understand where you're getting the 136 hours. It's 120 hours plus first aid training. And DZ, which we didn't put the DZ because that is flexible.
Yeah.
And first aid training is about 16 hours.
So in the chart, how many training hours are required? Firefighter 2, 72, hazmat ops 8, pump ops 40, fire service level 1, 40, fire service instructor level 1, 16. So the total of all those is 136. So I'm just trying to understand how we went from, when you're showing that, so visually what I'm seeing is that, but then you refer right below it to 120 and then plus 56, so it just seems
Exactly.
confusing because
So-
you've got all these different numbers.
A firefighter, to be a firefighter on the fire ground, you need 120 hours.
Yep.
And to be a fire officer, you need that additional training of those 56 hours.
Oh.
That's where you're getting it from.
Okay.
This is a brand new person. That those hours,
Yes,
yeah, not ongoing training, so.
okay.
We do, but we,
Thank
Unskilled
you.
new hire.
Yeah.
we also have,
Yeah.
we also currently have some officers that aren't qualified, are certified in
Yeah, so,
firefighter
yeah.
too. So we're literally looking at 176 hours to get them where they are. Where they need to be, sort of.
Yes, but it's just the way it's written, because it shows 136. And then somehow we went to 120 and then plus 56. So is should it be more hours than what it's?
No, just one is ongoing training.
No, I got
Everybody else, and one is, that's on page,
No, I got what you're saying.
it's, if a person came in today and had to go through everything, it's gonna take them 166 hours.
Gotcha. Okay,
So,
thank you for
and,
that.
and just keep in mind that we have weekly certification as one stream, or sorry, weekly, right? Weekly training as one and certifications a separate file.
I understand those very clear. I'm just trying to get the numbers to match up.
Sure, I think it's 176. So the first of that chart, the first three lines would be hours required, which is the 120 for a firefighter.
Oh,
So if you,
Few lines additionally, which would add the additional
thank you.
56, but does not include the time required for driver training, CPR. Or
And that's where you get the 50.
and if you,
that's on top of the 56 is the additional.
Yep.
For an officer level.
Yes. Okay,
And then even below that is the ones that are in italicized there. That's, those hours aren't still there.
Included.
They're not included. So
okay.
it's over and above any of those numbers that are already pre-listed.
So the hours are different between firefighter and officer.
Correct. Yep. It's everything included in firefighter plus the 40-hour course and the 16-hour.
That chart is not annual, that's
It's a one-time.
one time.
Yes. Which leads me to my next question. So once this catch up, not catch up, but catch up is done. And then everybody's on the same page as of July 2026. So what is that new 20-hour rule, I would assume, or 20-hour minimum, I assume is gonna change as of July 2027, because you now have more that you have to be keep competent in.
well, again, that number of 20 is the bare minimum just to be basically a firefighter one.
Yes, I understand that, but now you have to have more by
I
July 2026.
I completely concur. That's exactly what this report is getting at, right?
Yes.
Okay, so at the end of the day, right, that 20 hours, again, bare bones, that's if you can't make anything else, at least you're able to function safely on the fire ground, right? And then everything else is on top of that. You have to understand, we have to put, like, that hours has to be a start point so that you can, you can see the difference. That's why when you don't have folks attending training and we're not providing them the opportunity to attend training, well, that is, if you can't even make that 20 hours, you can't even safely operate on the fire ground.
So that would. Again, I totally understand all that. That wasn't my question, but. I definitely move on.
Let's give it a try here. That, once the certification is done, we are trained to the certified level and have been for years. So our hours that are shown in here, what we're doing annually and everything else. Once the certification is done, we're still trained to that level. So the same hours are there.
Okay,
So we won't have to go do any more additional training as other new recruits and upgrades and everything else to our training, but
thank you. That answers.
I guess the term you're looking for is sustainable.
it's certainly how you think.
Maintain or.
Well, so when you obviously understand what I'm saying. If you have more that you have to get certified for, then there must be more to keeping.
Correct. Like,
But you're saying you don't, because once you have it, then.
I think what the chief's saying is the 20 hours is the minimum annual hours to maintain a firefighter level of competency.
Yes, but
If
post
it's an op-
2027.
That would still maintain, correct.
Which
And
was
then-
all my question.
And then if it's, there would be officer, training above and beyond that to further develop.
The certification there is all, that's all it is. We're being certified for what we're doing now. All our new recruits for the last 9 years have all been trained to a certified level, so they're that. So basically for that, most of the people coming in, we don't have to retrain them again. They have been, we just gotta get them certified.
Yeah.
They're taking the test.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. All right, and I think that was answered. So the RTC training, so basically, the gist of what I'm getting here is that, we have the RTC training available at Lambton College locally. My question was like, why do we not just send each person to the RTC? Why are we doing in-house RTC? More certification, like when you already have a center that does the training, why are we certifying people to be trainers?
The RTC is similar to Gravenhurst. All right. They don't have a permanent staff that act as instructors. They bring in instructors that are associate instructors with the college and must be certified as associate instructor with the college, the Ontario Fire College. They're very much like the old Gravenhurst model was, where you go there, and I went there for 3 weeks to do my basic firefighting. And I had instructors from Ottawa Fire, I had instructors from Gravenhurst Fire, I had instructors from Kincardine Fire. They were all brought together because they were associate instructors and they were offered those weeks to work for the college at the college's cost, not ours, to do that training, to conduct that training as instructors. That same model works with the RTC. The RTC is the same thing, where we're gonna bring in instructors from different areas. The problem is, right now, with the RTC, the current RTC, we don't have enough instructors to get that model up and running. So this first course is to allow our folks to shadow so that we then can branch out. It's kind of that snowball effect with having more associate instructors available.
So you want to coordinate them with, as the mayor mentioned, Lambton Shores, Warwick,
St. Clair.
St. Clair, and for some reason, North Middlesex.
They've got
They wanna-
to drive. So I think part of that too is we're just the ones that have kind of stepped up to say we're gonna do this,
Yeah.
right? I would suspect that other municipalities within the county will step up and start, once they see it's working, will start going after it. We were using Petrolia for a lot of stuff, but we weren't happy with the results that were coming out of Petrolia. Petrolia had their own training center. A lot of the time, our training officers were ending up redoing the training because they would cover the fun stuff, but not the stuff that, nobody likes to do ladders, right? Nobody likes to talk about doing ladders. It sucks. It's boring. It's not very exciting. But one of the most common injuries we have on the fire ground is from people falling off a ladder. So Petrolia would spend maybe a little bit of time on ladders, but then would spend the really cool stuff like search and rescue. Right? So, and then we were walking out and our guys were having to go through that process again anyways. So that took away from the RTC. Now we're trying to bring the RTC model back up so that it works. And it provides a great deal of a network of instructors that we can draw from. But we also have to be able to provide. Right? It's kind of a mutual give and take.
Yep, I got it. So, yeah, it would be nice just to.
I just had two for the RTC that came in, 3.5 years ago. And there's some growing pains and everything else, when they first came in, that we can do these courses, here's the price. That it was something we couldn't even afford. The prices, then it came into scheduling, that we looked at new recruit coming in 22. And here's our schedule. Basically, for all our new recruits we had starting this, they would attend every weekend from the middle of October to Christmas. That Either for shift workers, for anybody, that kiss your weekends goodbye for the next 2.5 months. They're gonna say, screw you, I'm going home, and that,
Right.
so there's been a mixture between costs and scheduling and everything else. We've been working together with them and everything else, but that still haven't, again, with lack of instructors at the college and everything else. That trying to get everything together, that there's just been a big growing pain, so this is our best option right now, so.
No, it totally makes sense, yeah.
And I
For
think
sure.
if I could, Mr. Chair. Essentially, what the chief has done is get the conversation going to have that meeting to really get the RTC off the ground, and that's kind of the first steps of it here is figuring out what we have for a commitment of firefighters that would require the training, what the other departments would have. And then the next step is getting the instructors involved to be then certified to continue to grow that program.
Yeah,
Leaving all the administrative side on them and not running our own firefighter certification in-house. St. Clair Township runs their certification in-house. Expanding that so that it's the Lambton College RTC that does, Lambton County essentially. Is what we're aiming towards.
Right, yeah.
right, I'd definitely like to see it stay in Lambton County, because you don't wanna have the cost of having to go out of town, so yes, it totally makes sense to keep it. Keep it viable here.
For you, Christian?
Yes, those were my questions, yes.
Do you have something else? Or-
You didn't finish that question, is it for you, Kristen?
Well, yeah, it wasn't it, but those were my questions.
Or supper.
Okay, moving forward, I only have a couple of things. Been a good discussion, and it's needs to be had here because it's going to be had in the full council chambers, so, and it gives us a bit of a training. It's probably some of the questions are going to be asked when it's moved forward, so better we clarify it here before it moves on.
Mr. Chair.
And I'm kind of glad that we've separated this out now. We're just talking training division, training coordinator. And concentrating on that part of it, because that's what's extremely important here, that we get this training up to speed and all the paperwork and everything done. So I think it's a good thing to get it coordinated. Times are changing, times have changed, and they're going to change a whole lot more within the fire department. So organizational wise, I guess that is something we can talk down the road. If there's any changes there, keep that separate from the training coordination here. So I'm going to stop there. I've listened carefully. I've certainly thought about this over the past few weeks, and even had a conversation with one of our chiefs, and I think it's well organized here now, and I think the explanations that came back to this committee kind of clarifies a lot of stuff. So I'm going to suggest that we move to a vote, unless there's any other questions.
Not questions, comments. Before we go to a vote, on my first, well, I do have one question, sorry. On the 4.4, it reads as a position for division chief of training chief. But in the document, it describes title as a training coordinator. So I'm not sure how your amendment even reads, if it's reading correctly. Or your motion, sorry.
You don't have to put the original motion back up, and it has to be amended. I think
So-
that's why it was written.
The original motion was placed by the chair opening. The chair did note that that amendment that motion has been amended. And then have you read the amended motion?
Not yet. No, I'm going to read it before we vote.
So I just want clarity that was in there, but I could have one. The additional color. I would like, for me, I'd like the focus of this, like, to me, there's a lot in here, which is great to justify why a training coordinator is required. A lot of the document, in particular, I think around 15 to 25 talks about it's a policy outline of how the policy would be implemented or written. So, which is great, it's a good head start. I don't want, what I would like is it to be scoped to what is needed to get everybody where they need to be. Because there's a lot of stuff about optional training, things like that. I don't want it to become part of without going through council first, you know what I'm saying? If that changed down the road. I didn't want it to, I just want to make sure we're keeping within the scope of what we need to be focusing on right now.
Absolutely, Counselor, if I may through the chair. What is written in there is reflective of the ENR bylaw. Right, so our current bylaw, which was agreed to by previous council, what is written in that document is surrounding keeping us current for that ENR bylaw. So again, the way training is conducted and the way competencies are conducted is going to be based upon council's wishes through that ENR bylaw.
Well, that's interesting, because that's not how you answered the question on that. Because I asked and about that, and your
What's the question?
yeah, me too. I get to it. So I think it was question 12. On page 14, top of page, talks about other than the basic NFPA certifications, which will involve further expenses of time above and beyond what is required by July 2026. So you said currently your focus is meeting those legislative requirements, but in the future in time that these things will, I believe was the gist of what I got.
So what was meant by that comment was currently with the RTC, our focus will be on getting those mandatory certifications. The RTC will be offering other courses over and above that. So things like incident command, which are not necessarily mandated in the regulations, but incident command is a function of fire officers. There's a very specific way that we run an incident, and that training would be outside of that legislative scope, but would be mandatory, but from an MOL perspective, right? Things like accountability, stuff like that. So that is where we're getting that shift. Just because like firefighter 2 is mandated, fire officer 1 is mandated, but incident command, it's a 1 hour part of fire officer 1, whereas we want, because of its complexity, we want expanded training on that.
And I appreciate what you're saying, but I just, I think we've already increased, my concern is we've increased the needed hours from these fire personnel to meet these deadlines already. So I would rather we define the scope to what is currently needed to get to that point. And then from there, you know, that's something that can be looked at in the future. And you stated in your response that, you know, this talks are ongoing. None of this stuff is currently part of what needs to be at this point. So I'd rather keep it to that.
Go ahead, Adam.
So I think having a committee dictate what we can have our training or what we're gonna train our staff on is shorthanded, because you're tying us into one area. So obviously right now, priority 1 is get the firefighters certified, hands down. We're not gonna be doing anything else until everyone is ready to go, unless there's something unforeseen that comes up.
And weekly training. will-
But I don't want to be handcuffing my managers, not being able to offer the training. Because let's say after we get our certifications up and running, the firefighters and grows want training on new electric vehicles, hydrogen cells, which are about to start hitting us hard. We would have to come back to the committee and council to offer new training, just like in public works or in human resources. For me to offer training outside what you would set, we would have to come back. It's kind of handcuffing your management, and I don't know if that's a good idea. I'd rather make sure that it's loud and clear, which it is, that we concentrate on the certifications, which we have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Certification comes first. But at least allow some flexibility for the firefighters, the training chief and the chief to dictate what training is needed by those firefighters. Instead of having to have the firefighters bring something to the committee dictate whether or not the training is required and bring it back. We hire the professionals to decide what training we need for each department. We need to trust them to do their jobs.
And while I appreciate,
Don't want to comment.
I just had a comment to make on that. There's quite a bit of additional training that comes up that again, isn't mandated. A couple recently, there was an H2S Alive course that's being offered.
We're hosting
Green, what's part
hosting it at like-
there's been green bin rescue, large animal, response, like had an accident with a cow trailer. Chainsaw rescue, like, or chainsaw operations, courses like that, you know, they're not mandated anywhere. They are nice to have and nice to send a firefighter or two to go receive the training and then be able to bring that back and add that in as a complement, you know, in a portion of the training throughout the calendar year.
no, that's great. I appreciate, and I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Sabansky. But there is also budget restraints when it comes to that. So it's not, I'm not looking at it from, I'm trying to handcuff anybody. I'm just trying to look at it on both parts of it. So being a little bit,
Manager's responsibility under Occupational Health and Safety Act, NFPA, to make sure their staff are appropriately trained. They're responsible to do that. By you telling us what we can and cannot train, you are transferring the liability on yourselves. You hire professionals, those professionals should be good enough at their jobs to determine what's training their staff needs, and they should respect the budgets. You set the budget, we respect that budget. That's how we have to do it. If you
Okay.
get into setting training points, you yourselves are putting yourselves at risk and you're handcuffing management to do their jobs. So
Okay.
it's a little bit of a, you can set your priorities. I would say it's very appropriate for this committee to say, Chief, your responsibility is to ensure that the training in the next 2 years is to get everyone certified. And that is direction that is appropriate. But to say you're not allowed to do training outside of that until everything is done is appropriately challenging. And I would prefer not to have that over our managers.
for sure, and I appreciate that. I was coming from a
Agreed.
budgetary direction in my thought process, not what you're saying at all. So
And
that's good to
budgetary?
know in the budget time, then obviously that's where that focus.
Well, absolutely.
becomes.
Any training budget, especially for the fire department right now, has to be used first to make sure that they get their staff where they need to be. But again, if there is extra budget left, they're on track and that great course is offered, you need the flexibility.
And if they need more budget for it, you know, they're gonna say, hey, look, we need this, this, and this. But that's what I'm talking about, is that kind of conversation. But obviously that can happen at budget time.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think that's it. Be interesting to see where this goes. I guess I have one more question. Can this be a contract position so that we can understand or have a good understanding of how successful or not successful? How would you review that, Mr. Sabansky?
I don't see although there's a large gluttony of training to come through. Given the ongoing training requirements afterwards, and given it's just a part-time position, I don't know if a contract is gonna be very beneficial in that sense. Once you get that training officer into place, they can keep up on things. As you heard here tonight, it's just not the certification we're falling behind on, it's other matters too. So I think there's some strong benefits by keeping that person in full-time. The benefit is, as we get closer to being at our equilibrium for training, the hourly rate will definitely go down. The stipend will stay the same, but their hours will go down because they're providing less training. So given the small amount of the stipend, I don't know if you would want to put a contract position over it, because then they're kind of planning to their demise. If you allow it to be a full-time position, they can plan for 5-10 years down the road. They can plan and help with retention and new firefighter training. I think you're just opening it up. Whereas if it's a contract, they get very narrow views and they're not planning past that point.
Sure. Okay.
It's not a position that is going away there. Over half our hours that we spend go toward training. And there are actual calls and notes that we spend on the fields and that incident is way less than the number of hours we spend at the fire halls and the fire grounds practicing, so.
Yes, no, again, it's not about what's needed, it's about ensuring that it's successful, but I guess a probationary type,
There's always a probation period
yes,
in any new
would,
position.
I'll address any of those concerns.
So I think that's, once again, that's been a pretty good discussion, and I know Kristen hits on a few good points there, and one of the big things is budget. And Chief, I believe you said that we already budgeted in this year's budget for the position. And I guess we move this forward to the council because it is a new position and there is money involved for the position, so.
That's correct.
So the committee ready to move this forward, or at least vote on it? So, okay, it was moved by Gary Atkinson, seconded by Kristen Rodriguez, that the report by Eric Campbell, Plympton-Wyoming Fire Chief, dated January the 29th, February the 12th, regarding the position of training coordinator within the Plympton-Wyoming Fire Department be received. The Fire Exec Committee supports the amended proposal as outlined in the staff report. And many times it said training coordinator. That's a big part of the amendment. The staff report included in the February 12th, 2024 Fire Exec Committee agenda, and direct staff to bring it forward to the council for final approval. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay, now the big one. A counts. Number 5. Fire Exec Committee received and trade staff. That was by Kristen, second by Gary. Any comments on? We got the December, January pay. Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we've received some of the December ones at our last meeting, and I know it's taken to the end of the month for them to catch up on that. I do have a couple questions, if I may refer to the December one. There was a boiler repair at the Wyoming station. Did it explode or just easy maintenance, or what was that?
The circuit board on the boiler for the in-floor heat in the truck bay had failed, so it was replaced. That was the cost of initial service call, the ordering the board, and the installation.
Okay, thank you. And then we had to that sanitary investigation at the Kamlaki station. Do you have any information on that one, DC Jordan? Or
Gamble did that one.
I just gotta find it, I'm sorry. Okay,
Are you on page 1 of the December?
I am currently. I'm thinking
down, Chief?
that, depending on the cost.
That'd be that, figure out where all our sewage lines went and everything else.
Oh, yes. So that was the investigation that had take place in cooperation with the chief building official over those the repairs that weren't done without a proper permit hold. So. That's page. That, I hope. That was we had to get the drains scoped to make sure that they met the requirements and they went in the proper directions.
I knew that was gonna happen. I just wasn't sure if that was.
It's I'll be back.
We've got,
I'm probably not in.
what is it?
Okay, moving along, I see just under that Broadway service, we had truck 10 in for a road test, oil change and winter tires, but that was a substantial amount to pay for those items. I'm sure there's probably an explanation why that would be up around over $2,000.
The name of the company, sir?
Broadway service,
You're on the
On
second page.
Page 1 or 2?
page 1. It's actually page 38.
Well, I'm staring at it right now.
On them.
So there was an issue with the transmission. that they had to do the road test. It's about 30 kilometers an hour, and then it would just die out to nothing, and then it would click back up. So my understanding is they reset the transmission. Needed an oil change, obviously. The winter tires, yeah, they were at about around $2,000. But they also also got rims for it, steel rims as well.
Oh, we bought tires, winter
There
tires.
was no winter tires for that vehicle. So,
We're in southwestern Ontario, not St. John's, but that's okay.
well, my number one concern, if I may, through the chair, I respond to the 402 calls. And that road can be very treacherous. I'd rather not end up in the ditch myself.
I know, chief, I'm playing with you. Okay, I see over on the last page of December, which would be 39 on our sheets here. We had some work done by Lockhart. Install exit emergency lights and other works at Kamlaki Station, as well hooking up some various pieces of equipment. I'm sure there's an explanation for that cost.
Three.
Absolutely. So the lighting out at Kamlaki Station for its emergency and exit lighting did not meet code. It was literally a sign. So that all had to be put in and installed. There was an issue with one of the circuit breakers. It wasn't properly rated. So that had to be changed. And some of the wiring is already being pre-installed for moving the washer and dryer over.
So there was some parts involved in these substantial prices as well, then, other than just the labor.
That's correct. The lights themselves had to be like the actual exit lighting. They were literally, they had to be purchased and installed. They run up $100 each. It doesn't include the labor.
All right, if I may move along, Mr. Chair, over to January's payables. I see we had for AON Stenhouse, our VFIS insurance for firefighters. Is that a one, and we have our clerk, or sorry, our treasurer here as well. Is that a one-time payment of what our portion of that is for the year, or do we get hit with that again?
That's annual.
That's our annual piece.
15,000.
Thank you, and guess DC Furrier just left for a call, but I have maybe Chief Campbell, you could say on Sarnia Plumbing. Near the bottom, investigate odor at Wyoming Station, relocate outdoor trap. I thought that had already been done.
I understand it was, but we walked in one morning and it was very overwhelming. So again, we had to go through the process of doing the whole system again, and we did find, in fact, that underneath the furnace, when they installed it, there was a floor drain that nobody knew about. So that had to be dealt with. That's where the source of the smell was coming from.
So is this the same company that did the original job that did that?
That's correct.
Interesting. Okay, that's all that I have.
I wasn't here when the previous one was done, so.
That's fine.
And I was when the previous one was done, and Alan Little helped Mr. Furrier coordinate that. And the plumbers spent a lot of time sneaking through different set points. And they weren't able to get their snakes into every point of the hall just because some lines come off and you just can't tell where they are. So they did express to me at the time that it was very challenging to locate all the plumbing in the building. And they felt that there was likely numerous points of possible smell due to renovations over the years that didn't cap off correctly or needed adjustment and may have not been adjusted as needed.
Would there have been diagrams that when the building was erected that would have had that information? Because I know modern ones today do have all that information.
When the building was built, likely, and the County of Lambton may have that on file. However, it wouldn't account for any renovations. And I know the initial round where they found a couple caps that had wiggled loose, those were due to renovations, not from the initial construction.
We've got that all noted now, so moving forward.
That's my knowledge.
That floor drain has been since capped off.
So Just curious. How did they find it this time?
Smoke
They didn't find it before. How did they find it this time?
Smoke bomb. Oh, I think a smoke bomb, yeah. So I think what happened, and again, I'm only going with what the contractor told me. When they initially did it, they found smoke coming out of other areas. So that's why they thought they got it, and more likely that not they did. And then again, the smell comes back. There's obviously that floor drain was, I mean, I don't, not that I have any experience with that stuff, but to me, it would made no sense where that floor drain was. And it just ended up, we literally had to take the guts of the furnace out to find it.
Yeah. Well, the more holes you close, the more you.
Exactly.
Okay, that's, Gary, you have?
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Kristen, you have any more?
No, I think the mayor did an excellent job with those questions.
Okay,
Oh, I would like to say though, that
One more question.
that the December payables were laid out very nicely. Thank you, I appreciate that. For laying out the diesel expenses, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's it?
Yep.
okay. A couple of things I'll just comment on. I didn't realize that we had went ahead and bought that engine for the old pumper. So that's good. That's a good thing. $1,500, that's,
We got a heck of a deal. And with that, I don't want to steal DC Freer's thunder too much, but we have extra money. And we're looking at building some bench seats in the back with some seat belts that collapse so that people can ride in the back of the truck safely. And we're redoing some of the chrome work, and as well, we've got additional money there where we can actually redo the seat and everything else. So the truck is going to look amazing when they're done. It's going to be a beautiful, beautiful truck. Everybody's gonna want their picture taken with it. And for a small nominal fee, they can do that. Just kidding.
they must have found a way to adapt that flywheel on that.
They did. So the gentleman in Sarnia is working, he was able to do it. He's got to manufacture some parts, but it's
Right on, right on. That's good. This one, $300 and some spent on pizzas out at the fire school. How many people did we buy pizzas for?
I think we had about 20 people there. So that works out, that's about $100.
They're $40 a piece now, aren't they?
They are
Easily.
expensive.
30.
And you know what? The sad part of that was there wasn't much left over.
I was about to say, when you should feed my teenage boys, you wouldn't be
Yeah,
surprised.
yeah.
I think it's a good sign that you had a good turnout.
Yeah, we did. It was some really good training. It was incident command training. And we're gonna run that again this year, and it is mandatory for all officers to partake.
That's good.
I don't have any other questions on the expenses. I do like the way you've laid them out. Did great detailed. Very good.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Moved by Kristen Rodriguez, second by Gary Axon, and the Fire Exec Committee receives and approves the payables for December 2023, January 2024. All in favor? Gary, thank you. Okay, we have no staff reports tonight. At this time, we have no bylaws, no correspondence. Recommended reading, a new business. Okay, do you have anything at all for new business before I do this list?
Yes.
Do you? Go ahead.
I am curious to see what emergency call numbers that railway crossings are, but if it ties into what I'm going to ask. So now that we're billing out and getting some revenue, and hopefully we're gonna be doing something with insurance. I would like to ask if we could have revenue put with our expenses on a monthly basis, so we can kind of, or a quarterly report even. So we can kind of see throughout the year how much revenue is actually coming in, because that's a new thing for us, and it would be nice to kind of see how it's going, so we have a good idea. Is that okay?
I think that's great.
Thank you.
I would caution to the chair if I would, that right now we're just in the beginning stages. And it will be a few months before we actually start to see money coming in for the problem.
No, totally understand. So that's why I felt like, it's, would probably be one of the. Because it does take time to. And on that,
Probably just as easy to add a revenue line to your payables line, so you're just gonna have. You won't have monthly revenue, but when you do, you're able to see them come. So you don't have to create a new document. Norma, do you have a concern with that, or?
Not a bunch of people, I think.
It's just someone simply blank, but at least it's always there in format, so you can drop it.
yes, no, that's fine. It'd just be nice to know. That way, we're ahead of the game come by the time we have a clearer picture, right?
Does that money go to the truck reserves?
My understanding is it does go into the reserves, yes.
Oh, so I did want to ask on that. So any revenue coming in currently is going to the reserve. Reserves, I didn't know specifically truck reserve, but because revenue is coming in because of operational costs. I seem to remember some sort of conversation about that at our regular budget meeting. Shouldn't revenue be used against our operational costs at budget time?
Well, most of the revenue is used against operationals, except for the MTO money. That was in a policy that we've done before. It was put away to help pay for new trucks.
Okay, so but MTO money is part of operational costs. So, and I'm not trying to take money away from reserves, I'm just trying to understand. Because of, so you said a policy or a practice?
The
You know?
practice that we've always done.
So I guess that's something we
It's
can
the
discuss it, but
MTO money that was.
Oh, yeah, you can definitely discuss it at budget time, but it was put into that truck reserve because we've fallen, where we are now, falling way behind on truck reserves. for the
well, and that's
future.
one of the things I want to understand, but we can talk about all
Yeah,
that
okay.
at budget time.
And it avoids the pitfall of 1 year, you don't have a lot of calls, you lose that revenue, and then suddenly
Yeah,
your budget's in the deficit. At least when it goes to reserves, it's building up those reserves for capital projects, right?
No, for sure. I just remember the discussion on operational costs.
Certainly recall.
anything else new, Kristen?
Nope, that would be it. Thank you.
Gary?
No, the only thing I have is the working document at the fire halls, and I just think we had discussed about maybe having a working document on our monthly meetings, just so we have it there as not only a reminder for us, but for the firefighters, if they see that, or the public to see that we're working towards that. If we have anything, we don't. It's going back to the original terms that came from the firefighters, so I think we had made the assurance that we would have it there every month. So that's the only thing I have on that.
So are you asking if you want it as a title? As part of the agenda?
We had
Like a line
a
item?
copy of the working items that were outstanding every month on it. Like SOGs and things like that, so we knew that things were being worked on, like it was underway, completed, things like that.
Right.
So we should have a sheet that we look at with the title working document, and the items are on there if there's any.
I can, we could certainly do that. I can set it up in a similar fashion that I've done with the master plan where we. Like, and you'll see it when I do my staff report, where I've got a working document and as I kind of have a path to, and then. An end state, and then any additional notes coming along, we can do the same thing for that working document.
The final intent of that working document was to be posted on the bulletin boards at both stations.
Correct.
I asked Chief Jordan about that and he said, well, I agree, but they had our bulletin board down for painting. So it was supposed to be up there, and if anybody wanted to add, then it could be brought here.
So can I ask this?
Yes.
For sure. So to ensure that it gets on the agendas every meeting, should there be a title for it as part of the agenda to make sure it gets included?
Yes, under business arising from previous minutes, you can have it as a title, and then you'll just have your table there, and then you can go through the items. They did that previously in this committee, and we do it in Parks and Recreation as well.
Okay, sounds fair. Anything else, Mr. Mayor? No. Okay. Okay, so 10.1 under new business, emergency call numbers at railway crossings. I put that on there.
I was gonna say, I'm not, I wouldn't, I was.
That is a result of watching too much YouTube.
Fair enough, sir.
And major train derailments, especially down in Quebec and some down in the States. And there was a lot of confusion around a lot of these railroad crashes that people were right there, had seen the crash, no idea where to call. Like, these are in communities, right in the center of communities. So what they had down there, put up there was signs right at the tracks with the emergency call numbers on them. That's where I got that idea. I'm thinking, like, the amount of stuff that goes through here, and if something happened there, like, we normally would just call 911. I mean, I think most of us know that. But down in the States, they've put a sign right up there and what you can call directly. You'll get right into the head of the railway and say, hey, at this crossing, you've got a major crash, and then things happen after that. So that's why I put that on there, just discussion.
If I may, since I'm on Google Earth looking at everything right now,
Yeah,
I can confirm to you that the Broadway Street crossing,
yeah.
the Kamlaki Side Road crossing, Wanstead crossing, all have little blue signs on it with emergency contact information. The hazard may be the fact that if there's a railroad derailment at that crossing, you're not gonna get close enough to see those numbers. But there are little blue signs on those automated crossings.
Oh, that's it
with
right
the
there.
numbers, and it identifies the crossing and the sub-track stations. It appears only to be on the lit crossings, not on the unmarked crossing at this time.
See, I've never seen them. Anybody here ever thought about it?
Every cross,
There's those blue signs with those numbers.
there's new other ones.
There's new one.
So even if
That
I
was,
have our property.
Yep.
Where we go across to the other side of our property, there's a sign there now,
Good, okay. So this is good communication.
lots of new signs.
Kristen?
Really interesting and funny story, because my daughter was stuck on one. Stuck at one at Richmond downtown, trying to get to a pediatric appointment. And if you can imagine, it was 4:30 on a weekday in London downtown. And nobody knew who to call. Because it was like a half an hour, nobody would do it, literally a half an hour. So she did call 911. And 911, you have to call this number.
Yeah, well, and
And literally, she ended up working her way out of it, a mess, and it was still down for a good hour and a half, but it's true how it can happen. But I thought you were gonna go a whole different direction with that conversation. So, what I thought is revenue. So do we need to build back the railway for any crashes that occur at their crossings?
So that would probably likely fall under an insurance issue. Right, so that, yeah, there's probably an opportunity to build there. Again, it would depend on, you know, say if it's a car versus train, for example. It's gonna be one of those things, who's at fault, right? So then it's the same with a vehicle accident. We don't bill, we bill the at fault vehicle. And the OPP dictate who's at fault, and that's who we bill.
Okay, so no, so I guess where I was, my mindset was MTO. It's their highway, so we bill them because we're servicing their highway. It's their railroad tracks. So we should be billing them. I'm looking to recoup here.
I can't speak to that. I've never heard of that happening.
And I know it should be something new since everybody wants to bill everybody these days.
I would suggest that everyone call their local MP and get them to push the Liberal government to allow for that, along with our outstanding drainage fees.
Right. So we'll let go of those fees if they pay us.
We're not letting go of those fees.
No. No,
The vehicle,
I didn't say it that way. We'll let go of the fees we're gonna charge them for the railway being causing crashes.
so we can move on. This one was just for signs up at the railroad crossing, so.
if I may,
A good point.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I do think it's a good idea, and I think, but part of it too, and just to touch on that, is if we get called to it, we have all access to all those numbers through dispatch, so we simply get on the radio and say, this is what we need. dispatch then contacts them and they can do a couple things. They can patch them right to our radios. Or they can have them call our cell phones. But at the end of the day, our policies are pretty clear from our perspective on what we're gonna do if we end up in that situation.
I think that the intent of the signs on this YouTube thing and these train crashes was that if somebody's stuck on that track, they can get that number right there and they can call right direct and say, hey, we've got a transport across this track. So it's quickly right to their emergency call center, rather than waiting, 911, okay, they're gonna get the fire department there, but that's 10 minutes later and the amount of trains. That was the intent down there, is that you've got a number you can, you're right connected to them. So, but anyways, just there's signs up there. I'll look at it the next time.
Try to just, my suggestion is that everybody make sure they maintain their vehicle and don't have it stalled.
Yeah. Okay, moving on here. So, missing my dinner at the Lions Club, but that's okay. I'll pick up a sub.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Grab me a sub too.
Yeah, okay, joint health and safety committee updates,
Yep. So we're working on it. We're working with the old municipal health and safety. They're called now Public Service, PSHA, Public Service Health and Safety. Working with them to get our certifications up to where we need to be. We're also getting a proposal for them to maybe at some point in time come in and do an audit of our entire program from the joint health and safety perspective within the fire department. Hasn't been done in a while and we know we're lacking. So certainly that's on the books. We're waiting for a proposal for them. And then we're able to get our folks online to do the online certification. And then we're gonna work with a couple of our other partners within the county and set up a part 2 fire specific with a few dates to get that done as well. So it's all being in the process right now. And the meetings are still going forward. So we are continuing. We're just working on the security certification piece.
we have members at both halls now and committees are struck.
I did send Nicole a copy of the Kamaki one from January.
Yeah, and they'll be on the next.
Okay, what do we, okay.
Good. Okay, I know that I was asked about this particular item from a member of the public. Joint health and safety, and I know we have them at both halls, so.
Last meeting, I went back to, the guys were at the fire hall, and I went back and here this is done.
Okay, thank you.
I actually walked in on that and I appreciate that, Chief Jordan.
Yeah, so thank you very much. That's good. Comments on the new dispatch system update? They're working well or?
So, I mean, certainly there's some improvement. I'd be remiss to say if we don't have some bugs to work out. We have had seen some delays, for example, that we wouldn't normally get. But again, we're working on it. The other day we had a 2-vehicle MBC. We got toned out probably 20 minutes after it was already on Facebook. And the information we got wasn't exactly perfect, but that, again, it's not necessarily the fault of the dispatch. They're dispatching us as soon as we're getting the information. Where we had an advantage with the CAC before was that the ambulance dispatcher was right beside the fire dispatcher and we could dispatch them at the same time. Having said that, those incidents are rare. But again, that's part of the growing pains. And I've already requested to look into as to why that was delayed. But again, I haven't seen it yet where it's been a situation where the delay had anything to do with contributing to the safety of some people. So for example, if it is something where they need extrication, and they get paged very, very quickly. So
I'm thinking that one, Churchill, that they're there, both people, all the occupants are out of the vehicle. Either one recognizes either electric or there's some fluids leaking, so I saw a report. And all of a sudden somebody spotted that, oh, we better get 911 out here, even though it's been 20 minutes or so.
So, and Chief Jordan has a good point. So each set of circumstances is different. Now, I don't want to speak for Chief Jordan, but from my perspective, I'm finding that dealing with that dispatch as an incident commander far more what I'm used to. We're getting proper echoing back. We're getting confirmation. they are right on the minute when it comes to the way we page. And in some cases, we're gonna, over probably the next year or so, when we start compiling that data, we're gonna maybe look at a change slightly with the way, the North Hall with Chief Jordan's Hall being paged out. Right now, it's done automatically after 5 minutes if people haven't reached the hall. In a lot of cases for Chief Jordan's crew, that can be the time that they're actually responding to the hall and assembling. So we may have to look at pushing that out a little bit for that next page, but again, the data should, over a 12-month period from when we start, should give us that indication.
Also for, the North firefighters that they are. Soon as the first guy at the hall, get on the radio, tell him you're here, we're about to respond. Here,
So you respond back to dispatch, we're
yeah, cause they usually get in, come in, open the doors, start putting their bunker gear on, start the truck up, and then they're responding. Well, that other 30-40 seconds just put us over 5 minutes. Like, especially at 3 in the morning, somebody's getting out of bed, getting dressed, and then still got a couple minutes to the hall. That, and get in and everything, so either grab the radio and tell them.
Gary?
Just a question either between the two chiefs that we have here is, have we heard anything from our neighboring municipalities? Are they having issues as well? Or are they feeling more comfortable with it as time goes on?
If I may, Chiefs, do you want to, Scott? Okay, so right now, obviously, the folks I deal with the most are Lambton Shores and St. Clair. And they've been with the system since June. And they've had very positive feedback. Again, not with their growing pains, your worship. I mean, that's a given. Other folks, talking to Brad Goodhill and at Warwick, they're, for the most part, they're pleased. I think a lot of it is the simple fact that these folks are NFPA. They're trained at the NFPA standards, so we're seeing the little things that really make the difference to us, the things like the echoing back, the monitoring. I'll give you an example. When we were with CAC, we were doing Mayday training. Right? And one of the folks accidentally ended up being on the operational channel and did a Mayday. CAC did nothing. Absolutely nothing. Right? Whereas with Sarnia Dispatch, they want to work with us and actually do Mayday training. Right? It's just a difference in attitude.
Even they had an issue, actually replaced the radio in pump 7. That's what they're calling them. And just try to pick something up on a portable, and that every time the mic test, that just inside the hall, that all of a sudden automatically that this is already dispatch, can we help you come back to pump 7?
Oh.
Even our radios and our program numbers, they're getting the numbers, trucks leaving and everything else. Later, oh, sorry, I just got Bearcom here. We're just testing out a radio here.
Good. Well, it's good. It sounds like we're getting good quality service. It's just good. I mean, growing pains will be.
Yeah. For me personally, this is the 4th system we've gone through, so.
I mean, I think it's right that you folks are asking. It's a lot of money compared to what we were paying. Right? And, we have the right to have a greater expectation of service.
It's a lot more money. That's not what we were told. We were told there's very little difference in money and
I'm
data.
only seeing what I saw from previous budgets, but
It's a huge difference.
We were told
Oh, I know.
the opposite, that there'll be very little cost because we're already paying this or we're already paying that.
that I can't speak of.
No,
Honestly,
I
Chair.
know you can't say.
And the difference between what we were paying and what we're getting is significant. But what we were getting before, if they actually charged us for it, they withdrew all the services they did for us without charging. If we would have paid for all that, it would have brought it up, and it wouldn't have been that much of a change.
Yes, I remember that.
It's always more money. Always more money. Okay.
It's never less.
If I may, Not topic. So, obviously there's a sector, the industry that uses the not the 911 calling, like monitoring stations that use the phone numbers, and those phone numbers switched. Going from Wallaceburg to Sarnia. And there has all that been worked out now. with informing all these companies?
Again, my understanding is most that's been done. I don't want to speak for the county coordinator. Ultimately, that would. be
Oh,
something-
so is that who would?
Yeah, but, I mean, there has to be a limit too, right? Like, we as fire chiefs within a community, it's not like we can go to every individual provider and say who provides your home, you know, your alarm systems and everything else. That would be very labor intensive. So certainly, you know, for the most part, we're getting the calls. So I'm thinking it is. And as I've stated before, the CAC has a lifetime of automatically forwarding these calls. So, I mean, if it does happen on occasion, we're not seeing a significant delay.
That was gonna be my next question, because obviously they'll call the old number and they'll redirect them. So I was just concerned about that delay that would cause and in response time that you're talking about within minutes, you know, does that add a minute, 2 minutes, 30 seconds, 10 seconds? So those kinds of things.
Well, and I wouldn't think that that would affect an MVC. It would more likely affect a house call, like to a structure. MVC automatically EMS is going to be told at the same time. So, I think if there was a delay with that call, it's more likely what Chief Jordan said, whereas, okay, well, now we realize there's more here than what we need. We better get the fire department here.
Yeah. Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, moving on here, so we can get out of here. Now, this is a very important one here, 10.5. Extremely important.
Oh my God, I didn't even notice
Need a
it.
commitment tonight. Topic fire hall tour for committee member. I won't mention any names. I don't like to do that.
Oh, that's
But
fine.
we need a commitment.
Point,
I can't believe you put it on the agenda.
I said, that's it.
up every meeting.
That's it.
I
We're gonna,
know, right?
we're gonna get this set up tonight and,
Yay.
whoever's gonna tour, the member, he's, set something up and, take this individual on an extreme training tour of all the facilities. And whatever else you would like to have a discussion with her,
Her.
go ahead.
That first.
He or she.
I'm a her, it's okay.
So set up an appointment. I'll leave that with you for after the meeting.
Absolutely.
See another side of me, I'll be a her.
That particular, if I can to the chair, if that particular counselor would give the fire chief some dates that would work, then we will work to accommodate.
I will send them to you and then you'll disseminate between the two stations or just do one tour?
We'll probably, if depending on your time, whatever works best for you, we can do it all at one shot. Or we can do it at a couple different shots, or we can set it up so that you're going in on a training night. Going in on a training night with each hall, so that you can have an opportunity to see the guys train, and that might not be such a bad idea either. But I just think you need to get in there.
And to start just to see the hall, see the equipment, see the gear we've talked about and everything else.
Yes, it's getting that visual of the equipment and stuff, right? And
You wanna stop after work some night, I'll definitely. Join you, start at Kalaki, we come over here to Kalaki too, or Wyoming as well.
We'll actually get you some bunker gear. You can see what it feels like.
You got any of that small? You short?
We
Just thrown today.
we are not size determinant.
Okay. Anyway, please, yeah, set that up, would you? I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that one off the list. I am done.
Are you coming?
No, Bob's already had it.
I would suggest that not more than 2 of the members who are at the same time.
Where we have a meeting.
At the decorum.
I-
To avoid discussing any business of the hall.
Oh, you're talking about quorum.
I've had tours with all and, but hopefully in the future, we could get the committee and get out to your training, a training
I
night.
think it would be a very, perhaps a good idea that we hold a proper quorum, maybe as a training night.
Yeah.
And bring everybody down to the halls and we have a discussion or maybe even schedule it so that one meeting. Out of is down there at least once.
Yeah.
I just think that it would be very beneficial and I know that the mayor is pretty ready to. Give me the
I
high
don't
full.
think we have to have the broadcasting availability if we hold a meeting there too.
Well, we don't want to be a distraction either.
Broadcasting is not a stringent requirement.
Yeah.
It's, if possible, we are to broadcast, but if we choose an alternative location due to committee's choice or council's choice, broadcasting is not specifically required per se.
I think with the length of our meetings, sometimes we probably better to have them separate. sit in on.
I'm just
We don't want to take away from the fire.
putting it out there, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you, chief, but,
Okay, moving on, 10.6, this is another one that I put on here.
oh,
This is a result of,
not YouTube.
no,
He's making
no,
himself like-
this is a result of a fellow counselor addressing a member of the public about if public members could attend fire department first aid and CPR training. Chief, I believe you got the thing, but then it was passed on and said the fire board will deal with this issue. So all I want tonight is a comment, probably the same comment that you gave that fellow counselor for the public record here and
Absolutely. So currently, we don't have any instructors. We're bringing in third-party instructors to do our training. I'd be remiss in saying that if we were offering that, it would create a sense of liability that perhaps we don't necessarily want to take on as a organization. Certainly, we would have no problem with if that organization wanted to sign a release and use our facility and arrange for their own training. I don't have an issue with that, but we are not, I don't think it would be a good idea at this point from a liability standpoint for us to be arranging training for the public.
go ahead.
If I could just add too, that the level of training that we receive as firefighters is different level of training than what anybody on the street would get.
It's an extremely stringent point as well. But my understanding was that in the past, we had a first aid instructor that used to offer training for the public. We don't have that option right now. And so therefore, that's just not available at this time. Now, in the future, if we do get a first aid instructor and they're willing to do that, that will be up to them as a person and as a private business within that organization. That will be separate of the fire department. They'd just be using our facilities.
Yes,
Is the reason for this question is because there is no other CPR training available in Plympton-Wyoming or something? Like, because there's a lot of organizations that offer
For-
standard first aid,
for a cost, I think there's,
oh, for sure.
yeah, well,
Anybody would
I think they were looking for,
free.
if it was available, obviously, but yeah.
I think even if we were to offer that service, we would probably have to get additional insurance to cover the fact that we're providing public training. Therefore, we'd have additional costs. I think even if we were to do it in-house and offer it to the public, we'd have to do so at a fee. We'd be paying our staff to attend, and we would be incurring cost above and beyond that as well.
Yeah, I just feel like there's already organizations that offer.
I think we
Us to bring it here.
don't want to walk that line either. I think you're absolutely right, Counselor. I don't know if we want to be taking away from someone else's business. I don't think that would be.
Yep, that's what I was asked to do, bring it to the committee, and that's what we've done, and I think the fellow committee member will be, the counselor will be happy. Okay, moving on here, it looks like all we have, anybody has anything else? No? Okay, I'm good, this was moved by Gary Atkinson, second by Kristen Rodriguez. Fire Exec Committee adjourned until March the 18th, for the meeting or the call of the chair. All in favor? Yep. Hey, smoke time, me.